So what we're going to do is stereo versus binaurals. Stereo is, as we know, it's just two speakers hanging on your head with a coat hanger. We've got some really nice coat hangers here, but it's right there, right? So we've got no phantom center, we've got no air. It's literally as if the mixing monitors were out here. In this context, you're going to start to notice that it's actually quite separated. There's a left and a right, and then there's vocal and bass and all that stuff, and it's kind of in its own place, quite separate. But it doesn't have that phantom center that we know and love from speakers. It's actually, what I think is really special about this, besides the sort of engineering nerd stuff, which is double dynamics and triple canvas, what's cool is that, those of us who work in studios are very fortunate that we get phantom center. We're in the 1% when it comes to audio. This technology done well puts phantom center and room ambience into eventually cheaper and cheaper headphones, where millions and billions of people are going to experience phantom center and air and all the things that you get being two speakers in a room. You're going to have a moment where the stereo starts to sound kind of weird. It starts to sound kind of flat and separated and just not as cool. And where the binaural starts to really sound like a room of speakers. That's a moment that takes a minute because we're so used to stereo being this perfectly normal thing, right? It's a 100-year technology. And there's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't represent rooms very well. The best thing about stereo headphones is what's panned down the middle is really punchy and powerful. There's no phase bullshit from DSP, so you get center pan, punch, and power. But it doesn't do much for the image otherwise. And it turns out that center punch and power is the weakness of the immersive stuff. It's the weakness of the spatial audio stuff. So the cardinal point squad that I showed yesterday is all about getting low end to punch and getting center power in this format, which tends to sound like a swimming pool of alternative adventure, to put it kind of comedically and politely, at this stage in the engineering. So I'm really working to push this forward in the next couple of years to get us engineers to be kicking ass so that it can sound closer to this, which I think I'm seeing some smiling and some nodding, like that's pretty cool. It doesn't sound like washy bullshit. It sounds like music. That limiting is really extreme. Now the question is, for preparing an immersive, how far do you want to go with that? You want to slam the shit out of it just to get it in the ballpark? Or is it okay that it has a little more breathing room? This is all part of the art of delivering that other format. In my experience, if it's as good as this is, that's far enough. If it's not representing it, then people are like, hey, that doesn't sound like my music. That's obviously a problem. But if it sounds like it, but it's actually a bit more dynamic and doesn't have every last squeezy, nasty, limited thing, that usually flies by. It can be a breath of fresh air if you get it close enough and it has the size and has the dynamics. So it turns out that even with this DSP smear problem, if you get the cardinal points quad going on the quad corners and you get some LFE in there, you can actually have much more low end and more punch with the help of the DSP than you could without. But not if you're just putting it up in the front, because it's very weak. There's just not enough there. If you were going to just put low end in two places, you'd be better to put them, pan them to the side, except in your room, that'd be really weird, because you've got speakers there that don't have a lot of power, and you'd have your kick and your bass like right here. You'd sort of turn the room into a weird kind of mono. So it makes more sense to do phantom center in the room, to kind of do the phantom center at the same time of the headphones. We're all living in the real world, right? So we make relatively hot records. But if we had our druthers, it's nice that when it goes up in a chorus, it bangs harder. Everybody likes that. It's an objectively good thing. So when this has that dynamics that we're not getting because we've been in crazy land for 40 years, it's really nice to have that dynamic lift. And because it's built into the format, you can push hard into that number, but at least there's a number. The nice thing about the -18 integrated is that it is actually a good number as a maximum, because you can get to where it's just too much. Like I can be in the room and push everything and be like, it's so congested that it's not musical. The thing I see as a mastering engineer all the time is that people don't take care to ensure momentum. Momentum is the most important quality in any style all day long. Meaning, at no time should my interest wane. It's like the follow the bouncing ball, Schoolhouse Rock, like point me to something to listen to. If that ball disappeared in the middle of Schoolhouse Rock, you'd be like, what happened? When you're mixing, when you get to a chorus, you don't need a 3 dB lift, but you might need a 3/10 of a dB lift. Because your chorus is going to probably be, that hook or the beat or whatever, it's going to clamp some compression or whatever. So it's going to naturally tend to not want to lift because of your engineering. So you always want to listen at the very end and do a little master fader automation. It can be extremely subtle, 2/10, 3/10, up. And then at the end, back, but not so far back that it dies. And if it does die, then you have to look at arrangement. Because if the master fader has to come down a little after a chorus, there needs to be a reason for that bouncing ball to keep going. And if it's not there, then you need to add something in the arrangement or take something away to make some interest. So momentum is the name of the game in terms of getting people on the hook and keeping them on the hook. Make sure everything you're doing maintains momentum from beginning to end. Because if you do that, people will just like it better and they won't know why. But if you give them a second to check out, they're like, squirrel, and then they're like on Instagram. Because you lost them for like 1 second. All it takes is a nanosecond of momentum drop. And they check out. On that note, thanks.